Hey, and welcome back to JBC English Learning Academy. My name is Laura, and I'm here to guide you on your journey to clear, confident, and natural English. If you truly love Jesus, like the video, subscribe to the channel, keep watching the video believing in Jesus, you will learn something good. And comment to let us know what you are watching. Your support truly helps this channel grow. Alright, take a deep breath, relax, and let's begin today's session. When the first light of the morning touched the edge of the sky, I remember thinking that this day felt different, even though nothing had actually changed yet, and maybe that is how real change begins, not with loud noise or big moments, but with a soft idea that grows quietly inside the mind before the world even wakes up. And as I speak to you now, I want you to imagine yourself standing in that same early light, feeling peaceful, curious, and ready to explore something new, because this is the beginning of a story about mastering your morning routine, not just for productivity, not just for discipline, but for a deeper sense of balance and control in your life, a control that starts the moment you open your eyes. Long before you speak to anyone or check your phone or step outside, and as I guide you through this story, I want you to listen slowly, feel each word, and imagine yourself living inside the moments I describe, because this is not just English listening practice. This is a journey to help you think in English, feel in English, and tell your own story with confidence and calm. And so the story begins on a simple, quiet morning with a character named Daniel, a young man in his late 20s who lived alone in a small apartment on the 5th floor of an old building, a place that looked a little tired from the outside, but felt warm on the inside, especially when the sun entered through the big window above the desk. And on this particular morning, Daniel woke up earlier than usual, not because he had an alarm, but because he had gone to bed the night before with a strong desire to change something in his life, something that he could not fully explain yet, but he felt it strongly. Like a whisper telling him that he had been living on autopilot for too long, always waking up at the last minute, always rushing, always feeling behind even before the day began, and as he opened his eyes slowly, he felt a sense of calm that surprised him, as if the morning had been waiting patiently for him, and he stayed still in his bed for a few seconds, breathing slowly, feeling the soft warmth of the blanket, listening to the faint humming sound of the refrigerator in the kitchen, and noticing the gentle silence that filled the room, a silence that did not feel empty but felt kind, like a friend quietly sitting beside him. And in that moment, he understood something simple but powerful, that the first few minutes of the morning, the very beginning of the day, had the power to shape everything that came after, and he realized that he had never really paid attention to that before. He had always jumped out of bed, checked his phone, rushed to get ready, and left the house feeling like he was already late, already stressed, already tired, and now he wanted something different, something better. And as he sat up slowly, the cold air touched his skin and brought him fully awake, and he smiled a little because even though he had no plan yet, he knew he was taking the first step toward mastering his morning routine, a routine that could bring peace and clarity to his life if he learned how to build it with intention. And as I tell you this, I want you to imagine yourself waking up with that same intention, not rushing, not worrying, but giving yourself permission to begin slowly, to breathe, to feel the morning, because the truth is, The way you begin your day becomes the way you move through your day, and Daniel did not know that fully yet. But he would learn it through the journey he was about to take, a journey filled with challenges and realizations, small and big, all starting with this simple moment of waking up early and paying attention, and after sitting quietly for a minute or two. Daniel placed his feet on the floor and felt the cool wooden surface under his skin, grounding him, reminding him that he was here, alive, present, and he whispered to himself, "Today will be different," not loudly, just softly, like a promise. And that was the hook, the small spark that would carry him through the days to come, and as he stood up, his body felt a little heavy, but also relaxed, and he stretched his arms slowly, feeling his muscles lengthen and warm up, and this simple stretch felt good, better than he expected, and he thought to himself, maybe I should do this every morning, and that idea alone made him feel hopeful, because he realized that a morning routine did not have to be complicated or perfect. It just had to begin with one small step that made him feel good, and with that gentle realization, he walked toward the window and opened the curtains, letting the soft morning light enter the room, painting the walls with warm colors, and he stood there for a moment, watching the quiet street below, where only one or two people were walking, perhaps going to work early or taking a morning walk, and it made him feel connected to something bigger, the world moving slowly, peacefully, and he thought that maybe this quiet time was something he had been missing all along. Something his body and mind had been asking for without words, and as he watched the soft clouds drift across the sky, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for this simple moment, and that gratitude softened his expression and relaxed his shoulders. And he realized that the morning was not just the start of the day, it was the start of a new version of himself, and with that gentle but powerful understanding, he walked to the kitchen to drink some water, feeling the coolness refresh his throat and wake him up even more, and he remembered reading somewhere that rehydrating in the morning helps your body feel awake, and even though he wasn't sure if it was true or not, he liked the way it made him feel, and with each small action, stretching, opening the curtains, drinking water, he felt like he was building something meaningful, something that belonged to him, and as he leaned against the kitchen counter, he reflected on how busy and chaotic his mornings used to be, how he would wake up late, rush through everything, skip breakfast, and leave the house feeling like he was already running behind, and he realized now that those chaotic mornings had influenced the rest of his days, making him feel stressed and overwhelmed. And so he made a quiet decision right there in the kitchen, a decision he would carry with him throughout the story, the decision to create a morning routine that would give him strength instead of stress, clarity instead of chaos, and purpose instead of panic. And this decision was the beginning of his transformation, although he didn't know it yet. And as I speak to you, I want you to think about your own mornings, about the way you usually wake up, about the first things you do. And I want you to imagine how different your days might feel if your mornings were calm, intentional, and guided by a routine you love. And I want you to stay with Daniel as he continues to explore his new morning, because through his journey, you may discover something important about your own life, your own habits, and your own potential for change. And so Daniel stood quietly in the kitchen, thinking about what he wanted this new morning to look like. And he decided to take a few minutes to sit at his desk and write down his thoughts, and as he sat down, he noticed the notebook he had bought weeks ago but never used, and he opened it to the first blank page and wrote the words, "My morning routine." in simple handwriting, and below that, he wrote, "I want my mornings to feel peaceful," and writing those words made him feel lighter, as if he had released something that had been hiding inside, and he continued writing about how he wanted to wake up earlier, stretch, breathe calmly, drink water, open the curtains, and maybe even meditate or read something inspiring. And as he wrote, he realized that he didn't need a perfect plan. He just needed a direction, a starting point, a reason to keep going, and he smiled because for the first time in a long time, he felt excited about his day, not stressed or rushed, but excited, and with that excitement, he closed the notebook and took a deep breath, feeling his chest rise and fall slowly, and that breath anchored him in the present moment, reminding him that he was in control. And as he looked around his room, he felt a quiet sense of pride for starting something new, something that came from his own desire for growth. And with this feeling, he stood up again and walked to the bathroom to wash his face, feeling the cold water bring him fully awake, and he looked at his reflection in the mirror and noticed something different, something brighter, not because he looked different on the outside, but because he felt different on the inside. And he said to himself quietly, "This is the start," and those simple words filled him with courage. And as the morning continued, Daniel felt more and more connected to this new version of himself, and even though he knew the journey would not always be easy, he also knew that he had already taken the most important step, beginning, and I want you to remember that too, because every change in life begins with a single quiet moment when you decide that you want something better, and you choose to take one small step toward it, even if you don't know exactly where it will lead. And as Daniel walked back to the main room, he felt a calm sense of purpose guiding him, and he sat down again, thinking about how different he felt compared to his usual mornings, and he realized that what made the difference was not just waking up early, but waking up with intention, waking up with awareness, waking up with a desire to build something meaningful. And he knew that the journey would continue long after this first morning, but for now, he felt grateful for the beginning, and he whispered again, "Today will be different," feeling the power of those words, and as he prepared to step into the rest of his day, he carried with him a new understanding, a new energy, and a new sense of hope. And with that hope, he moved forward, ready to explore the challenges and lessons waiting ahead. And that is where this first part of the story ends, not with a big dramatic moment, but with a small steady flame inside Daniel, a flame that will grow brighter with each morning, each choice, each discovery. And as I leave you with this part of the story, I want you to reflect on your own morning routine, on the first minutes of your day, and I want you to ask yourself gently, what kind of morning do I want? Because the answer to that question may shape the rest of your life. And now, with this quiet reflection, we prepare to continue in the next section where Daniel begins to test his new routine, face unexpected challenges, and learn deeper truths about himself and the power of the morning. The next morning arrived much earlier than Daniel expected, and even though he had promised himself that he would wake up early again, the moment he heard the soft sound of his alarm, he felt a familiar heaviness pull him back toward sleep, and for a moment, he lay there with his eyes closed, thinking that maybe he could take a break just for today, just one day, because yesterday had felt so good and maybe that was enough. But deep down he knew that this was the first real challenge of his new morning routine, the first test that would show whether he truly wanted change or whether he only liked the idea of change. And as he lay there, half determined and half sleepy, He remembered the way he had felt the day before, the calm, the clarity, the gentle feeling of control, and he realized that if he let himself fall back asleep now, he would be choosing his old life again, the life where he woke up late, rushed through everything, and always felt behind, and that thought alone made him open his eyes a little wider, letting the faint light of dawn touch the room, and he whispered, "Not today," even though his voice was quiet and tired, and with that simple whisper, he pushed the blanket aside and sat up slowly, feeling the same cool air wrap around him that he had felt the day before, and even though it wasn't easy, he reminded himself that real change is not born from comfort, but from small moments of resistance, moments exactly like this one. And so he stood up and stretched. Again, feeling his muscles wake up, and even though the stretch felt tighter and more uncomfortable today, he kept going, breathing deeply, letting his body open, because he knew that if he stopped now, the day would slip away from him, and the pattern of his old mornings would return without mercy. And as he walked to the window and opened the curtains, the soft morning light returned, but this time it didn't feel peaceful in the same way. It felt like a challenge, like the world was watching him to see what choice he would make. And he took a deep breath and said quietly, "I want this." And those simple words reminded him of his promise, of the notebook on his desk, of the peaceful feeling he experienced yesterday. And he knew he needed to keep moving forward, step by small step. He walked to the kitchen again, poured himself a glass of water, and drank it slowly, feeling the coolness move through him, waking him from the inside, and he noticed that even though this morning felt harder, it still felt good to choose himself, to choose discipline, to choose a version of his life he had never allowed himself to experience fully. And as he leaned against the counter, he thought about how strange it is that the first day of change often feels exciting, but the second day feels like a battle. And he realized that this was the moment many people stop, the moment habits die before they can even grow. And he told himself that he didn't want to be that person anymore. He didn't want to give up on himself. And he didn't want to stay stuck in the cycle of good intentions followed by old habits. And this small conversation in his mind gave him the strength to continue. And so he left the kitchen and walked toward his desk, where the notebook from yesterday was still sitting, open to the page where he had written, "My morning routine," and he looked at those words again, feeling something inside him soften, something like commitment, something like hope, and he picked up the pen and wrote below it, "Day 2, tired but trying." And when he wrote those words, he smiled, not because he felt strong, but because he felt honest, and he realized that honesty is sometimes the fuel that keeps a routine alive, the ability to admit that something is difficult without quitting, and this realization calmed him, and so he closed the notebook again and took another slow breath, grounding himself in the present moment. After a minute or two, he went to wash his face, letting the cold water wake him up fully, and as he looked at himself in the mirror, he noticed that he looked more tired today, but he also noticed something else, something deeper, something stronger. He noticed a quiet determination in his eyes, the kind that grows not from excitement, but from effort, and he whispered, "I'm doing this," and even though he didn't feel powerful, those words made him feel like he was slowly becoming the person he wanted to be, the person who kept promises to himself. And with that thought, he returned to the main room, sat on the floor, and tried something he had never tried before, a simple breathing exercise he once heard about but had never practiced. And he sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and breathed in slowly for 4 seconds, then held his breath for 2 seconds, and then breathed out slowly for 6 seconds. And he did this again and again, feeling his body relax little by little, feeling his mind slow down, feeling his worries soften around the edges, and soon he noticed something surprising. His tiredness didn't disappear, but it felt lighter, easier to carry, and he realized that breathing was not just a simple exercise. It was a way to tell his mind that he was safe, that he was calm, that this morning was a gentle space for him to grow. And when he opened his eyes again, the room looked softer, the light looked warmer, and he felt more connected to himself, more ready for the day ahead. And as he sat there quietly, he thought about how strange it is that such small actions, stretching, drinking water, breathing, could create such a big shift inside him. And he wondered how many mornings in his past he had missed because he had been sleeping or rushing or worrying, and he felt a small sadness for those lost moments. But instead of letting the sadness pull him down, he let it inspire him, reminding him that he wanted to create new mornings, better mornings, mornings full of intention and calm. And as he stood up again, he felt a small sense of pride, even though the morning had started with resistance, because now he felt like he had passed the first challenge of his new routine, the challenge of showing up even when he didn't feel like it. And as he walked around the room slowly, he realized that maybe the hardest part of any routine is not starting it, but staying with it. And he smiled because now he understood something that many people never take the time to learn, that consistency is a quiet kind of strength, not loud or dramatic, but steady and powerful, and he wanted to build that strength inside himself, morning by morning. After a few minutes, he sat at his desk again and looked out the window at the soft morning sky, noticing that the clouds were moving slowly across the horizon, and he wondered how many people were waking up at that very moment, feeling the same conflict he had felt, wanting to change, but also wanting to stay in the comfort of old habits. And he realized that change is not a lonely journey, even though it often feels that way, because everyone who ever tried to become better had to face mornings like this one. Mornings where discipline felt heavy, where motivation was low, where progress felt slow, and understanding this made him feel connected to others, even if he couldn't see them, and this connection gave him another small burst of strength, enough to keep him moving forward. As the morning continued, Daniel decided to make himself a simple breakfast, something he rarely did before, and he cracked 2 eggs into a pan and listened to the soft sizzling sound as they cooked, a sound that somehow made him feel grounded, as if he were taking care of himself in a new way, a gentle way. And as he prepared his breakfast, he noticed how peaceful the kitchen felt in the quiet morning light, how different it felt compared to the rushed, stressful mornings he used to have, and he told himself softly, "I want more mornings like this," and he knew that the only way to have more was to keep showing up, just like he had today, even when it felt difficult. After breakfast, he cleaned the kitchen slowly, almost mindfully, listening to the soft sounds of running water and feeling the smooth surface of the plates as he washed them, and he realized something simple but powerful. When he slowed down, life felt bigger, clearer, kinder, and he wondered how many moments he had missed because he had been moving too fast, never giving himself the space to breathe or feel or reflect. and this realization made him understand why morning routines matter so much, not because they make you more productive, but because they make you more present, more alive, more connected to your own life. And as he finished cleaning, he stood quietly in the calm kitchen and let that feeling sink in. The rest of the morning flowed gently, and when it was finally time to leave for work, Daniel put on his shoes slowly and stood near the door, feeling ready in a way he had not felt in years, and he whispered again, "Day 2, with a small smile, and he walked outside. Noticing how cool and fresh the air felt on his skin, and how different the world looked when he wasn't rushing through it, and as he walked down the street, he felt a kind of quiet confidence inside him, not a loud confidence, but one that felt steady, peaceful, and real, and he carried that feeling with him throughout the day, even when challenges came, even when work felt stressful, even when tiredness returned, because he knew that he had done something important that morning, something he was proud of, something that would shape the rest of his path. And when the day finally ended and he returned home, he felt tired again, but this time the tiredness felt meaningful, as if he had worked on something important, something deeper than his job, and as he prepared for bed, he felt grateful for the effort he had made that morning, grateful that he had not given up, grateful that he had chosen discipline over comfort, and as he lay down and closed his eyes, he felt the same quiet determination rise inside him again. The determination to wake up early tomorrow, to continue building his routine, to stay committed to the promise he made to himself, and he fell asleep with a soft, peaceful smile, ready for the next morning, even though he knew it would bring new challenges and new lessons, and new opportunities for growth. And as I end this part of the story, I want you to think about the mornings in your own life when you face the same challenge Daniel faced today, the moments when your bed feels warm, when your mind feels tired, when your motivation feels low. And I want you to remember that choosing discipline in those moments, choosing to show up even when you don't feel like it, is what builds the strength inside you, the strength that shapes your life, your habits, your future, and just like Daniel, you have the power to choose a better morning, one small step at a time. And now we move forward to the next part of the story, where Daniel begins to experiment, expand, and build a deeper understanding of what a meaningful morning routine truly is. The next morning arrived, and Daniel woke up even before his alarm, not because he felt fully rested, but because a curiosity had begun to grow inside him, a curiosity about how his mornings could feel if he continued to experiment. If he tried new things instead of sticking only to yesterday's small routine, and as he opened his eyes slowly and let the soft morning light touch his face, he felt a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness, like a traveler standing at the edge of a new path, unsure where it would lead, and he reminded himself that this was a journey, not a single step, and the journey itself was as important as the result. And so he sat up in bed and took a long, slow breath, feeling his chest expand and then relax, noticing the calm and quiet around him, and he realized that even though his mind sometimes wanted to rush or complain, his body was learning a new rhythm, a new pace, a new way of being present in the morning, and that thought gave him hope, a hope that made him smile softly, feeling the small thrill of discovery that comes when you begin to explore your own life in a new way. And as he pushed the blanket aside and stood up, he felt the cold wooden floor under his feet, grounding him in the present, reminding him that he was awake, alive, and ready to try something new. And today, he decided, he would expand his routine. he would not only stretch and drink water, but he would also add a few more small experiments to see what made him feel stronger, calmer, and happier in the morning. And as he walked to the window and opened the curtains, letting the golden morning light fill the room, he felt a kind of anticipation, like opening a door to a room he had never entered before. And with that anticipation, he walked to his desk and opened the notebook, feeling the smooth paper under his fingers, and he wrote, Day 3, the experiment, and under it, he listed simple actions he wanted to try. Stretch, drink water, breathe, meditate, write, and maybe even a short walk outside. And as he wrote, he felt his mind focus on the possibilities instead of the difficulties, noticing how easy it was to feel overwhelmed in the morning when you think about all the things you should do. But how simple it felt when he allowed himself to choose one small step at a time, and that simple awareness was already a lesson about patience, about kindness to oneself, and about learning from the process instead of rushing to a perfect result. And with that in mind, he stood up and stretched again, letting his arms reach high above his head, feeling the slight tension in his back and shoulders melt slowly, and he noticed how different stretching felt today compared to yesterday. Not just physically but mentally, because now he was aware of how small actions affected his mind, how stretching could bring focus, calm, and energy all at the same time, and that realization made him curious to explore the other small experiments he had planned. After stretching, he walked to the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water, sipping it slowly, feeling it cool and fresh as it traveled down his throat, and he imagined his body waking up from the inside, his organs feeling the movement and energy returning. And as he drank, he smiled, thinking that this simple action, which he had always ignored in the past, now felt like a gift to himself, a way to care for his own life, and he realized that the morning was becoming less about rushing or getting things done and more about nurturing, about preparing himself for the day in a gentle, intentional way. And with that thought, he placed the glass on the counter and remembered the breathing exercise he had learned yesterday, and he sat down cross-legged, closed his eyes, and began inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 2, and exhaling for 6, and as he repeated this several times, he felt the mind quiet, the usual buzzing thoughts slowing down, and he felt the tension of sleepiness and daily stress begin to fade, and as he opened his eyes after a few minutes, the light seemed brighter, the room calmer, and he felt more connected to himself, more present, and more alive, as if he had unlocked a door that had always been there, but that he had ignored for too long. Feeling the calm energy in his body, Daniel decided it was time to try something new, meditation, something he had never practiced before, and he sat comfortably, closed his eyes, and tried to focus on his breath and the sensations in his body. Noticing how thoughts would come and go, some exciting, some worrying, some trivial, and he didn't fight them. He just observed them like clouds floating across the sky, and after a few minutes, he noticed a gentle sense of clarity forming, a clarity that felt different from the excitement of yesterday. It was slower, deeper, more stable, and it reminded him that mornings are not just a physical time of day, but a mental space, a place where your mind can be trained and nurtured just like your body. And he realized that this meditation, even if only 5 minutes long, could help him face the day with less stress, less rush, and more focus, and the thought filled him with hope. Hope that small experiments like this could slowly create lasting change. Hope that even tiny actions could lead to transformation if done consistently. And that thought inspired him to continue trying, continue exploring, continue learning. After meditation, Daniel opened the notebook again and began writing freely about his thoughts, about his feelings, about the sensations he noticed in his body, and he noticed that writing helped him see patterns in his mind, moments of distraction, moments of calm, and moments of resistance, and he wrote without judgment, just observation, and he felt a strange joy in seeing his own mind on paper, understanding himself better, and he realized that reflection is as important as action, that taking a moment to observe what is happening inside you can guide your next steps, and that insight gave him another burst of energy to continue exploring, to keep building this new routine that was becoming more than just actions. It was becoming a part of who he was, a way of living intentionally, thoughtfully, and with purpose. Feeling curious, he decided to add another small experiment, a short walk outside, even if only for a few minutes, just to feel the morning air and the world waking up. And as he stepped out of his apartment, he noticed the subtle sounds of the city. The soft hum of cars, birds chirping faintly in the distance, leaves rustling gently, and he felt a quiet thrill, noticing things he had never paid attention to before. And he realized that the morning itself was alive, and he was part of it, connected to it, not rushing past it like he had in the past, and walking slowly down the street, feeling the cool air on his skin and the soft rhythm of his steps. He felt a sense of freedom, a freedom that came from being present, from being intentional, from choosing his actions instead of letting the world push him forward. And he thought about how easy it is to forget this feeling in the rush of life, and he promised himself that he would carry this awareness into the day ahead, no matter how busy it became. After returning from the walk, he made a simple breakfast and ate slowly, noticing the taste, the texture, the warmth, feeling gratitude for each bite, and he realized that even meals could become part of the morning experiment, moments to slow down, to reflect, to connect with oneself. And after breakfast, he cleaned the kitchen, not out of obligation, but as a continuation of his experiments, noticing the sounds, the feel of the soap, the cool water, and finding small joy in the mundane. And in these small actions, he realized that mornings could be an entire space for exploration, mindfulness, creativity, and personal growth, far beyond the simple act of waking up early. By the time he sat down to review his notebook again, he noticed patterns forming in his writing, actions that brought energy, actions that brought calm, and actions that were difficult but important. And he began thinking about how to combine them into a flexible routine that respected his body, his mind, and his life. And he understood that mastery of the morning was not about rigid schedules, but about experimentation, observation, and gentle adjustments over time. And this insight made him feel empowered, excited, and calm at the same time, because he knew he was learning something valuable, something that would grow stronger with each morning, each experiment, each reflection. As the morning ended and he prepared for work, Daniel felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that he had tried new things, observed the results, learned from them, and planned small improvements. And even though challenges would come, even though some mornings would feel harder, he realized that the journey itself was already teaching him discipline, presence, and self-awareness, and that realization made him feel alive in a way he had not felt in years. And as he stepped outside again, ready to face the day, he carried with him not only a new routine but a new mindset, a sense of curiosity, playfulness, and gentle discipline, a sense that mornings could become a space for creativity, learning, and self-care. And he knew that the more he experimented, the more he would grow, not only in the mornings, but in life itself, and that was a powerful understanding, one that he hoped to carry for the rest of his life. And as this section of Daniel's journey closes, I want you to reflect on your own mornings and think about what small experiments you could try, what tiny actions could create calm, focus, and energy, and how curiosity and observation can turn ordinary mornings into a space of growth, insight, and self-discovery. Because just like Daniel, you can begin today, step by step, breath by breath, and experiment with your own morning routine to discover what makes you feel alive, calm, and ready for the day ahead. The morning after his experiments felt different for Daniel, not because the sun was brighter or the city quieter, but because he felt a quiet strength inside himself that he had never noticed before, a strength that came from showing up consistently, from experimenting, from observing, and from allowing himself to feel each small action fully. And as he opened his eyes and let the soft morning light spill across his bed, he noticed something subtle but powerful. He didn't feel the usual tension in his chest, the rushing thoughts, or the anxious pull to immediately check his phone. Instead, there was a calm clarity, a sense of being present, as if the morning itself had become a companion rather than a task, and he smiled softly to himself, feeling a gentle pride, and that pride was not the kind born from achievement, but the kind born from effort, intention, and awareness, and it reminded him that transformation is not sudden, not dramatic, but a quiet growth that happens when you give yourself time, patience, and attention. And as he pushed himself to sit up, he felt the familiar cool floor beneath his feet, grounding him, reminding him that he was awake, alive, and capable of shaping his own day. And today, he realized, would be an opportunity to test the new habits he had been building, to see how they affected his energy, his focus, and his sense of calm. And even though he knew challenges would arise, he felt a readiness to face them, a sense that he could navigate the morning with intentionality, presence, and curiosity. And that was the first lesson of true transformation, that you can meet the day on your own terms, one small action at a time. After standing and stretching slowly, feeling his muscles awaken and his body lengthen, Daniel walked to the kitchen to drink water, noticing how this simple action no longer felt mechanical, but intentional, a conscious choice to nourish himself. And he reflected on how little attention he had paid to his mornings in the past, rushing through breakfast, ignoring hydration, and moving mechanically, and he realized that those mornings, though ordinary, had shaped the quality of his entire day, without him noticing. And now, by consciously building even small habits, he was planting seeds of energy, focus, and calm that would grow stronger over time. And as he drank, he felt gratitude for the simple ability to choose differently. And that gratitude created a gentle excitement, the kind that grows quietly, subtly, without fanfare, but fills you from the inside, like sunlight slowly warming a room. And he smiled, feeling fully present for the first time in many mornings. Daniel decided to add another step to his evolving routine, something small but meaningful, a short journaling session to reflect on how he wanted to feel during the day, to focus on intention, and to write down gratitude, goals, and observations about his body and mind. And as he sat at his desk and wrote slowly, carefully, each word felt alive, each sentence a bridge between his inner thoughts and the world he was about to step into, and he noticed patterns in his feelings, noticing which actions from previous mornings gave him energy, which brought calm, and which challenged him, and this reflection itself became a habit, a practice of self-awareness that added depth to the routine he was building. And he realized that mastery of mornings is not just about waking up early, stretching, or drinking water, but about creating a mindful structure that connects body, mind, and heart, and that awareness made him feel more confident, more grounded, and more capable of handling the unpredictability of life. Feeling inspired, Daniel decided to take a slightly longer walk outside than before, a gentle exploration of his neighborhood, noticing the subtle morning sounds, the birds singing, the distant hum of traffic, the feeling of air moving against his skin, the way the sun illuminated leaves and buildings, and as he walked, he noticed that his mind felt clearer, lighter, as if the act of moving slowly through the morning world allowed thoughts to settle, to organize themselves naturally, and he realized that movement, even gentle walking, could become an essential part of his routine, a way to connect with the world and himself at the same time, and this insight excited him because it showed that small, simple actions could create meaningful impact, quietly but profoundly, on his energy, mood, and mental clarity. Upon returning from the walk, Daniel prepared a mindful breakfast, focusing on textures, colors, and flavors, noticing how chewing slowly, tasting fully, and appreciating each bite made the experience richer and more satisfying. And he realized that eating had become another part of his transformation, a ritual that honored his body and contributed to the calm, intentional energy he wanted for his day, and after breakfast, he cleaned mindfully, observing the sounds and sensations of washing dishes, moving slowly, noticing the small satisfaction in completing a task with care, and he felt a subtle joy in these ordinary moments, a joy he had never experienced before, and he recognized that mornings were no longer a race or a list of chores, but a living, evolving practice of self-discipline, awareness, and delight in simplicity. As the morning progressed, Daniel reviewed his notebook again, reflecting on the last 3 days, noticing patterns of effort, resistance, joy, and calm, and he realized that transformation comes not from perfection, but from consistent awareness and action, from the willingness to try, fail, adjust, and continue, and that awareness deepened his commitment, giving him the strength to keep showing up each morning, regardless of difficulty, fatigue, or distraction. And he understood that true change is cumulative, the result of many small actions compounded over time, like sunlight slowly warming a cold room, and this understanding made him feel both patient and powerful, ready to continue the journey with curiosity and grace. By mid-morning, as he prepared to leave for work, Daniel felt a sense of peace he had never experienced before at this hour, a calm energy that flowed from the intentional morning he had created. And he realized that mornings shape not only the start of the day, but also how you interact with the world, with others, and with yourself, and he felt the quiet power of habit, the subtle but profound influence of consistent choice. And he knew that each morning offered a new opportunity to refine, adjust, and improve, and that mindset made him feel free, because he understood that transformation is within reach, step by step, moment by moment, breath by breath. As Daniel stepped outside, feeling the cool morning air against his skin, he noticed his own posture, his energy, and the way his mind felt sharper, calmer, and more present, and he reflected on the lessons of these mornings, that small actions matter. That consistency matters more than perfection, that curiosity and experimentation are vital, and that self-awareness allows you to shape your life intentionally, rather than reactively, and he understood that discipline and freedom are not opposites, but partners, that structure can create space for creativity, clarity, and joy, and that by choosing actions consciously, even small ones, you transform not only your morning, but your sense of self and your approach to life. When he returned home that evening, Daniel felt the fullness of transformation not as a dramatic event, but as a quiet energy, a subtle shift in his thinking, habits, and awareness. And he realized that the mornings he had begun to cultivate had ripple effects throughout his entire day, making him calmer, more focused, more thoughtful, and more present, and he reflected on how far he had come from the days when mornings felt chaotic, rushed, and meaningless, and he smiled softly, feeling grateful for the effort, patience, and curiosity that had carried him to this point, and he understood that this was only the beginning, that every morning offered a new chance to learn, grow, and evolve, and he whispered to himself gently, "I am becoming the person I want to be," feeling the quiet truth of those words fill him from the inside out, a feeling stronger than excitement, stronger than motivation, a feeling of steady, lasting transformation. And as I leave you with this part of Daniel's journey, I want you to imagine your own mornings, your own small steps of transformation, your own experiments, reflections, and intentional choices, because just like Daniel, you can cultivate mornings that shape your mind, your habits, and your life, slowly, gently, and powerfully, one breath, one action, and one quiet moment at a time. And as this section closes, remember that transformation is not sudden, but consistent, and the morning above all is the space where it begins. As Daniel's mornings became more intentional, more calm, and more fulfilling, he began to notice not only the changes in his routine, but also the subtle shifts within himself. And he realized that the real value of his morning practice was not in crossing off tasks from a list, but in how it shaped his mind, his habits, and his understanding of his own life. And as he sat quietly one morning, sipping water and watching the soft sunlight spill across the room, he reflected on the journey he had taken over the past few days, noticing the moments of resistance, the moments of curiosity, the small victories, and the lessons hidden in struggle, and he understood that transformation is rarely dramatic, but is instead a series of intentional choices, a chain of small actions, repeated consistently, that create lasting change. And as he thought about the early mornings he had once dreaded, the times he had wanted to stay in bed, he realized that each time he chose to rise, stretch, breathe, meditate, walk, write, or eat mindfully, he was training not only his body, but also his mind, and even his sense of self, and that insight filled him with gratitude, a gratitude for the ability to grow, to learn, and to shape his own life through simple, deliberate actions, and he understood that gratitude itself had become part of his morning routine, a quiet but powerful force that reinforced the positive habits he was building, and he smiled, feeling the warmth of that awareness in his chest. Daniel also reflected on the challenges he had faced, the moments when motivation felt low, when tiredness made him want to quit, when old habits whispered that it was easier to stay in bed or skip the routine. And he realized that those moments were not obstacles, but opportunities to practice discipline, to strengthen his self-awareness, to show himself that he was capable of consistency even in difficulty. And that understanding made him feel stronger, more confident, and more patient with himself, because he saw clearly that transformation is not about perfection, but about persistence, curiosity, and self-compassion, and he realized that mornings are the perfect laboratory for learning these lessons, because each day brings the same challenge, the same chance to choose, the same opportunity to experiment, observe, reflect, and improve, and that thought filled him with both excitement and calm, because he knew that he was not rushing to change everything at once, but building a foundation that would grow stronger with every conscious morning. He thought about the small experiments he had tried: stretching, drinking water, breathing, meditating, walking, journaling, and mindful eating, and he noticed a pattern emerging: actions that were simple, intentional, and consistent created the greatest impact, while actions taken without awareness often had little effect, and he realized that the key was not to do more, but to do each action fully, with presence and attention. And that principle could be applied not only to mornings, but to all parts of life, and as he recognized this, he felt a sense of freedom, because he understood that mastery does not come from forcing yourself into rigid routines or completing endless tasks, but from being aware, present, and intentional in the choices you make, one step, one breath, one moment at a time, and that awareness became a quiet joy, a joy he felt every morning as he moved through his rituals with curiosity, reflection, and gentle discipline. Daniel reflected on the ripple effects of his mornings throughout the day, noticing how the calm, focus, and energy he cultivated early had changed the way he approached work, conversations, and challenges. And he realized that the morning sets the tone for the entire day, influencing not only what he does, but also how he feels, how he thinks, and how he interacts with the world. And that understanding made him value the morning more than he ever had before, not as a block of time to fill, but as a sacred space to shape his life, and he felt gratitude for the consistency he had begun to build, knowing that each morning was an opportunity to refine habits, learn from challenges, and grow steadily into the person he wanted to become. And that thought filled him with a quiet sense of purpose, a purpose that was both motivating and gentle, giving him a clear direction without pressure or stress. As he reflected deeper, Daniel realized that the lessons from his mornings could be summarized in a few essential truths. First, small actions repeated consistently create transformation. Second, curiosity and experimentation help you discover what works best for your life. Third, self-awareness and reflection guide you in making intentional choices. Fourth, discipline and presence are more important than motivation or willpower alone. And fifth, gratitude, patience, and self-compassion make the journey sustainable and joyful. And as he sat quietly, feeling the truth of these lessons resonate within him, he understood that the power of mornings lies not in achieving more, but in becoming more aware, more present, and more alive. And he smiled, feeling a sense of deep fulfillment, knowing that these lessons were now part of him, ready to guide his actions and decisions in every day ahead. Daniel thought about the people who struggle with mornings, who find it difficult to wake up, to focus, or to begin their day with intention, and he realized that the first step is always the same: to choose, even in a small way, to rise, to act, to experiment, and to reflect. And he understood that no one needs to do everything perfectly. No one needs to create an elaborate routine, and no one needs to wait for motivation to strike, because the most powerful habit begins with just one conscious action, one small choice, one intentional moment. And he felt inspired knowing that anyone could begin today, right now, just as he had. And that thought gave him hope, energy, and excitement, because it showed that transformation is accessible, practical, and achievable, one step at a time. As the morning progressed, Daniel made a promise to himself to continue experimenting, observing, and reflecting, to remain consistent, to adapt when necessary, and to maintain the calm, intentional energy he had begun to cultivate. And he knew that the journey would not always be easy, that there would be tired mornings, distractions, and moments of resistance. But he also knew that each challenge was an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to strengthen his habits, and that mindset gave him confidence, patience, and resilience, because he understood that transformation is a process, not a single event, and that every morning was a new chance to practice, refine, and evolve. And he felt excited about the days, weeks, and months ahead, knowing that with each conscious morning, he was shaping not only his routine, but also his character, his mindset, and his life. Finally, Daniel reflected on the emotional and mental shift he had experienced, noticing that mornings now felt like a space of calm, focus, curiosity, and joy, rather than a source of stress or rush. And he understood that the true value of his practice lay not in what he did, but in how he felt, in how he approached each moment, and in how he related to himself and the world. And that awareness filled him with gratitude, peace, and a quiet happiness that he had never experienced before. And he realized that the power of mornings, of small actions, and of intentional living is not limited to a few days, but accumulates over time, quietly transforming life in profound ways. And that thought gave him a sense of wonder, calm, and purpose, because he knew that each day, each morning, each breath, and each conscious action mattered, shaping the person he was becoming, step by step, moment by moment. And as I leave you with this reflection, I want you to think about your own mornings, your own small actions, and the possibilities that lie in consistency, awareness, and intentionality, because just like Daniel, you can begin today. Take one small step. Experiment, observe, and reflect, and over time, these simple choices will build habits, strength, calm, and clarity, and transform your mornings and your life more than you might imagine, one quiet, mindful, intentional step at a time.